Hello, everyone. My name is Curtis Kelley. I'm based in Philadelphia. I own and operate the company Pet Parent Allies. And I have been in the industry for about 10 years now. And what I do a lot of is private behavior training, in-home, or out and around in people's neighborhoods. I really want it to be effective, so we train where they are. I do obedience, I do basics, puppies, potty training, as well as reactivity and aggression. Pretty much if they're in the range of Philly, I will work with them. So a lot of what I have been seeing over the years is dogs who really struggle with self-control. And that can look like a lot of things. So it inspired the presentation for today. So I will jump right into it. Uh, okay, is everybody seeing the presentation?
I am not yet. We're still seeing you.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. All right, so now you the presentation.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, good. So self-control in dogs. What does it look like? How do we define it? What do we do about it? Can we make it better? What are the ways in which your dog lacks it? What are the ways in which they're demonstrating it to you and you might not have realized? So self-control is traditionally defined as the ability to control oneself, in particular one's emotions and desires or the expression of them and one's behaviors, especially in difficult situations. So the difficult is kind of the most important word here, because it doesn't really matter how much self-control you have if there's nothing hard going on in your environment. And the same goes for dogs, where if a dog cannot bark when they have been well fed, well exercised, well attentioned, are curled in nice and comfy on their couch, it's not really a moment where they're exerting self-control of any kind. But if you have that same dog who's hungry and has to potty, and there's a squirrel running right across their face, if they're not barking in that situation, that is a lot more challenging. So some of the factors that can contribute to a dog's self-control, there's a lot of them, but as far as physical characteristics go, hunger, rest, and that's rest quality, because you can have dogs who are sleeping quite a lot, but not getting enough quality rest. And the same goes for the other way. You can have dogs who are undersleeping or not sleeping enough, and that will also have an impact on their overall self-control. So any medical issues obviously will have a big impact. Injuries or any latent things that are going on will take a big impact on a dog's self-control. But some of the other more subtle ones are arousal nuance. So you might have heard the terms like fight or flight, or high arousal. And a lot of dogs have a challenge with finding the zones in the middle. So they can be calm if there's absolutely nothing going on. They're like well fed, well stimulated, etc. All of their needs and wants have been met. And then there's high arousal, where that's the state you might get if they are chasing a ball, or if they are in the dog park playing with friends. And a lot of dogs can have trouble with the middle gears. So they can run around and be wild and zoomy, or they can be sleeping, but they kind of struggle to do the in between. They might struggle to like go to the park and sniff around, or take a jog around the park, and then mostly hang out. So the level of nuance that a dog can reach, or the level of gradient that they have between their very high state of arousal and the very low state of arousal, can have a big impact on their general self-control ability. Habit practice, both behavioral and emotional habits. So your dog might have my dog Vista has a behavioral habit of when we walk in the door, she collects whatever toy is nearest to her and waves it around. She parades it like it is a gift to us, that she is there. And along with that comes an emotional habit of being excited and dancing around. So habits can be practiced both in their execution, and in the emotion that's attached to it. Where that becomes sticky is if you have a dog who is in a habit of practicing getting really upset about something, or they're in a habit of practicing feeling threatened, and they will, because they're responding to threats all over, it can be hard to get them to make different emotional connections in their brain. Their basic skill set. So a dog that knows a touch and a recall and a focus and a sit and down and stay and leave it and drop it, is going to tend to have more self-control than a dog that doesn't. And generally, there are always exceptions, but with having more tool set, it gives them more options with which they can interact with whatever is going on in their environment. And it gives you more tools to be able to help them through that situation if they are struggling at all. So self-control can have a lot of looks. And there's two in here that should stand out from the others. The first one, tippy taps, chewing a bone, leaving a valuable bit of trash on the ground, eating a bit of trash on the ground. So I have them included in there, and I have them directly kind of contrasting like that. Because again, self-control is the expression of desires through behaviors in a difficult situation. So a lot of dogs have a tendency to stress eat. But for a dog who is totally overwhelmed by social situations, or pre-pandemic, I would see a lot of dogs out for parades or block parties, or those types of events, or art fairs where there's a lot of vendors, a lot of tents, a lot of food. And they're dogs that I really, really wish were not there, because they were just petrified of everybody walking by, but their person brought them anyway. And so these were dogs that were trying very desperately to get away from all of the people around them, couldn't, and so we're doing a bit of self-soothing. eating the leftovers that had fallen on the ground. Ultimately, I think that dog just shouldn't have been there, and there are better and more self-soothing activities that a dog can do, but that's also a matter of what they have access to. So a dog that's for a dog that was that petrified around all of these people, to even take the option of doing the self-soothing and eating some trash off the ground as just any measure of stress relief is a level of self-control. There are probably a lot of things that would have made that better, even if the dog was going to be forced to be there. But self-control it always has a context. For the first three, for tippy taps, like tippy taps could look like really, really excited, but if a dog is tippy tapping in lieu of jumping up and flying to your face, that's a very high self-control moment where their excitement is such that they want to be demonstrating a more enthusiastic behavior. Same with the growling. For dogs that I have worked with who had a very very short reaction time between getting upset and biting for it, those dogs have learned to growl, at least as one warning signal. I'd prefer 10 or 15, and that their people are really understanding that well. But when a dog can choose to growl instead of bite and make contact immediately, that's a form of self-control. And there's a limit to the amount of self-control that every dog can naturally have. But all of this is just to say that whatever behavior is being expressed, if you can look at the situation and see that a more extreme behavior would have happened or was likely, then you can look and see your dog is executing self-control, even if it's not in necessarily the format that you would choose. So out of control is a lot easier to spot. It could be the squirrel yodel, or raccoons, or if a lot of you are in Austin, I'm not sure what's the predominant pest of your area, but squirrels tend to run Philadelphia. So all of these things are easier to see. There's a level of intensity or a level of arousal that you can look and see that, like, oh, this dog is out of control. It's easy to see in dog parks, for instance. Even if there's no dog that's being actively aggressive, you can, when you're looking, you can see the dogs who are really running full sprint with no regard to what's in their environment, and those dogs are a bit out of control. So those are clear and obvious in the moment signals, and like those ones are easier to see. And there are subtler signals that can indicate dog self-control could use improving, is maybe okay in some moments, or is okay up until the very hardest level of difficulty that they encounter. But these are signals that you would look for kind of over a broader range of time, throughout the course of a day, a week, maybe even a month or so. And that's unpredictable behavior. So if you ever have a dog that's just like done something really like really unpredictable, really random. Maybe they like growled at somebody and they're usually really friendly, or they went in a trash can and they'd never bothered it before, or they startled for a truck and they never cared before. Um, Again, looking at those middle stages of arousal. If you have a dog who consistently can go way up high or be kind of way down low, but some of the middle ranges where they're awake and alert but not running or chasing after something, if they're generally seem to be missing that zone, if they the speed at which they up and down regulate. For most dogs, after intensive play and once exhaustion, they can down regulate pretty quickly and come in from a long walk, or from a good run, and generally be laying down and pretty calm within 10 to 15 minutes later. So if you have a dog that maybe they come back from doggy daycare and they're amped and they're wired and just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, even after playing with other dogs all day, that's an indicator that they have trouble down regulating their nervous system, and that's something that teaching them better self-control can help with. If they're generally listless, like they kind of pace and wander when there's no particular event or disruption, or if they have very little frustration tolerance. So that can look like a lot of things, but you see it in dogs. I'd say you're most likely to see it in a dog who seems to have very little regard for boundaries. So you also get it a lot in adolescent dogs, just because they are they have more hormones raging throughout the brain all the time. Teenagehood is hard in every mammal, but dogs who have very little, who, if they start not understanding you while you're training, they might sneeze and just walk away, or they're really quick to opt out of whatever activity you're trying to do for them if it becomes a little difficult. Or dogs who are really mouthy and get frustrated and almost mouth on you harder if you insist that they try to take the treat gently. So these are all signals that you might look for in a broader range of time. And the bite inhibition is generally a pretty direct link to wherever a dog's arousal and self-control levels are in that moment. So it's a good indicator for if whatever you're doing with them is really intense, or if it's at the right level relative to how they normally take treats. So a good way to that I think of self-control is like a bank account. And similar to how people have and dogs have emotional bank accounts and mental bank accounts, the self-control bank account is you can make deposits from it, and those are moments in which your dog really needs a lot of self-control to get through that moment, whatever it is, whether it's like walk through a crowded street, or don't chase after a squirrel, or what have you. But you can also make investments into that bank account by training for a lot of individual triggers that might be hard for them to control around. So if that's food laying on the ground, you can build that bank account by practicing a lot of leave it or other such skills and having it be successful. Some of the more indirect ways that you can really add to a dog's self-control capacity. First one is routine. When their life is pretty stable, they know it's coming next. They know you could ask your dog and they could tell you exactly what's going to happen each day. That gives opportunity for one for moments of difficulty where they would have trouble controlling themselves tend to decrease because it's a routine. Everything, they know what's coming next and they know what to expect in each event. And it also makes it easier to help them access whatever tool set they have in moments where something unpredictable happens or they need a lot of self-control. So that's the other part that's similar to a bank account. You can have your known expenses for a month, and those will, like, you know when you're going to buy groceries, or like when your paychecks are going to hit. But if you have a day where your car breaks down, that hits the bank account in a lot more unpredictable ways because it's an unaccounted for expense. So same thing with self-control. For moments that weren't anticipated, they can hit a lot harder. And the other, I guess, where I draw a comparison frustratingly to bank accounts is sometimes it feels like you got money coming in, out, in, out, in, out, and it can take a few days to like really know where exactly your finances are. So any things that you're doing with your dog, whether to make an investment in that self-control bank account or make a deposit, can have a 3 to 5 day lag before you see what that effect was. So if it was a little deposit, if it was a little moment where your dog needed to stay on the ground as your friend came to visit you, and then it was otherwise pretty routine, it might be like a just barely noticeable blip in the day or so afterwards. But if you have a moment where your dog has to keep calm and collected as a reactive dog ambushes you around the corner and barks really intently at your dog's face, that's a much harder hit to the bank account, and that's something that you would see show up in the following 2, 3, 5 days, depending upon how resilient your dog is. So there's, as we're asking for self-control from our dogs, we got to make sure that we are paying appropriately for the challenge of what we're asking for. So distance to any particular trigger or enticement will have a big impact. Going closer is harder, farther away is easier. Positioning is in reference to how you are moving or standing in relation to where your dog is and what your dog is doing in space. So if we're asking for a downstay with you standing kind of like upright, normal. Oh, Sorry, was there a question?
No, we got it.
Yep. Okay. If you're asking for a downstay and you're standing normal, upright, that's a lot easier than you ask for that same downstay, but you have your foot planted right next to your dog's rib cage, where you're positioned in a place that's much more threatening to them, and so it's harder for them to hold that position. Duration, asking them to do any particular thing for longer is going to be harder. Reward value. So again, we just want to be making sure we are rewarding with something that is worthwhile for our dogs. If I were to say, okay, here's a choice. You can have $1 right now, or you can have $2 in an hour. There's not, you maybe might wait for the $2, but if you have something else going on, but there's not a whole lot of motivation to really wait the hour for $2. It's not that much difference. But if I said to you, okay, you can have $1 now, or you can have $1,000 in an hour, your motivation level for taking the delayed reward has gone way up. So the what we are offering in exchange for our dog's demonstration of self-control will have a big impact on their ability to do that. Distraction, the more distraction is in the environment, the harder it is. Also, previous trauma or stress. A dog that has been abused, or a dog that lived through a hurricane, or a dog that has just accumulated trauma throughout the course of its life is going to have a hard time demonstrating self-control in those similar types of situations. So if they have had bad encounters with dogs, asking them for sit and a focus or a touch with a dog 5 feet away from them is going to be a challenge that we better be paying in filet mignon for, if they are even showing signs that they have a chance of doing it. So if you've ever had a moment where you felt like your dog just really reacted in a really strange and out of character way, while there are plenty of dogs who have learned that their whatever warning signals they give won't be respected, and they're left with just like, well, if I want my needs met, then I have to be willing to like hurt for it. So I'm hoping that's not any of your dogs. And if it is, there are still strategies for that. But more just any behavior that seemed out of the blue. I am willing to bet you that it wasn't quite. Cortisol and adrenaline can last 2 to 6 days in your dog's system. So you might be familiar with this type of graph, or a graphic similar to this to the right, an idea known as trigger stacking, where if we put your dog in a whole bunch of difficult situations right in a row, eventually we reach a point where we have exhausted their self-control bank account, where they're running on empty, they're overdrawing. And so those are the moments where we have some kind of random behavior pop up that's really outside of your dog's normal range of behavioral vocabulary. So that might be the moment where your really, really friendly dog growls at a stranger, or your dog who's really always ready to go and loves adventures won't get in the car. or your dog who is ordinarily very sleepy and kind of likes to just lay on the couch and watch movies with you, spends a day pacing, and can't relax. So some of the ways that you can help your dog get more control, easy, just really, really easy, low-hanging fruit, easy access ways. If your dog goes through the trash, put a lid on it, or keep things that they would want to make bad decisions around out of access. Or gates up in the kitchen if they are going to like bother you incessantly while you're cooking. I don't know about Austin or areas that you guys live in, but Philly, some streets are always garbage ridden, and chicken bones just seem to rain from the sky here. So if I don't want to spend 15 minutes really, really intently getting my dog's attention and telling her essentially, don't look at the ground, 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 I'm going to pay you for it, but don't look at the ground. That's kind of emotional, that's kind of mentally draining for one block of walking and not really worth it. So I'm just going to skip walking down streets that are like that if I'm not directly looking for a really intensive challenge with her. So again, routine and stability are your friend. The more routine that you can build into your dog's life and the more stability, the more self-control you can give them access to. From you, some easy things that you can do in the ways that you're approaching and interacting with your dog. Many of the dogs that I know jump and get really, really excited when you come inside. And who's to blame them when we get home from work and we throw open our arms and say, dog, buddy, you're here. I'm so happy. And they jump up to match us. But if your dog then jumps up on other people and they get upset about it, or they don't want that kind of greeting, from the get-go, if you're coming inside more calmly, or at least giving them a moment to step away from the door and you come down to them, or be as excited as you want, just on the floor where they don't need to jump on you to have your attention. That's a very easy, low-hanging fruit, maybe, way that you can get your dog more self-control around people coming in. Totally no fault if you love to have your dog jump all over you, but acknowledge that and have a workaround for when you have other people coming in which they don't want it. If you have ever encountered a moment where you were asking your dog for a stay or a place or crate or what have you, and you started introducing distance, or you started to like increase the challenge level, and you were on your way back to them, and you got really excited, and so then they got up and broke their stay. Again, they're just responding to what they're seeing from you. So an easy way, if your dog struggles with distance on things like a stay or where they need to lay still, if you meander back and make it more calm and more casual, then you can make that a lot easier for them. So in themselves, self-soothing cues. When your dog shakes out after a tense moment with another dog, or if they shake out like when they come home from a walk, you can actually put that to a cue and instruct them like, hey, that was a stressful moment. It's all right. Like, it's over now. Shake it out. Literally, shake it out. Shake the stress out. It's a stress release mechanic for dogs. So, simplest way, it takes a while, but essentially, whenever they start shaking, just put a name to it. So you're doing something called capturing that moment for them. Where as they start to shake, tell them shake or de-stress or what have you, and keep telling it to them every time they're doing it. And eventually, you'll be able to just say shake it out or de-stress, and they'll start shaking. Sniffing is another excellent way for dogs to access some self-control and calm themselves down after a big and stressful moment. So a really easy game that I also teach is just to go find it. And what I do for that, I put a treat on my dog's nose, chuck it somewhere a little in front of her, tell her go find it, and then let her do the work of really sniffing it out. And her reward is she gets the treat, like she finds it. So that can then expand to a whole room and several treats to multiple rooms. If you have a yard where you are, then you can also use that as well. Choices, I will go into that more in the next slide, but choices are a really big impactor for dogs' self-control abilities. Successful challenge. I have come across research that has said that for a person to keep motivated in learning something new and pushing, so you're not going stagnant, you want a challenge difficulty level about 4% higher than whatever you're comfortable with. So I can't say exactly that 4% is the magic number for dogs, but probably somewhere under 10%. Just really teaching your dogs that they can be successful in various situations, and building on success momentum in little gradual steps as they are getting better. And counter conditioning for any items or moments that really get a strong fear response from them. So if your dog startles for loud noises, then you can help them get more control by starting to change the circumstances of loud noises or change the consequence of loud noises. So giving this is something that can take some careful timing, but giving them a treat after a loud startling sound, if it's high enough value, or if they have a fear of walking over like metal grates or manhole covers, then giving them high value treats for it can be a way that you create more self-control for them. It's one less thing that they have to worry about, that they need self-control for. If those things become totally fine, then you can move on to some other area in which your dog struggles to execute their self-control. So choices. Choices help give your dog a feeling of agency, and choices run totally counter to any amount of fight or flight response, which it's actually fight, flight, freeze, friend, fidget. There's different interpretations, but there's actually a couple more responses from just the fight or flight that people talk about. But decisions happen at the front of a dog's brain, really far away with the amygdala, which starts to run things in that fight or flight response, where literally there's no time for making decisions. You're just kind of reacting because your life is being potentially. So, but getting a dog to make more choices in a day is also a really easy thing that you can do to help them just gain more self-control. And the This or That game is a game that I use to play with dogs who are really anxious, really frightened, just have trouble adjusting to whatever's going on in their environment. They might be dogs that spend a lot of the day hiding, or just kind of huddled in their crate or in their bed. So in the This or That game, you give your dog two options of things that they enjoy. So it might be for an anxious dog, it would probably be something like an additional blanket to snuggle up in or a really high value treat. Again, we want it to be both of those things to be motivating to that particular dog. So for a more active dog, it might be the ball in one hand or the leash in the other, like indicating we can play ball or we can go for a walk. Both of them should be things that your dog really enjoys, but you just offer both, and you can say, like, pick one. You don't even have to say that, just offer both, and whichever one your dog starts to point to, either first or most, give them that thing. If they pick the ball, then go out in the yard and throw the ball with them. And if they pick the leash, then leash them up and take them for a walk. But that way, your dog can start to feel like they have more agency over their environment, and making choices in innocuous situations where they're always going to get something that they really enjoy can help bridge the gap to continuing to make choices even when the environment gets harder. So that might also be a for dogs who really like touch. You might offer a touch, like a hand closer to their neck or a hand closer to their butt. They can have butt scratches or neck scratches, and they are free to choose. So really the thing that I care about in this moment is that your dog is making the decision, and that they're getting rewarded both within their brain from a increase in dopamine, and from actually having whatever they choose begin to happen. So self-control in play is another important one to mention, and dogs can have a wide variety of play styles. So asking for self-control in play is both difficult and very important. But and it's also subject to people's level of comfort. It can be easy to misread a dog's signals as far as how they're playing or what is appropriate. And that is on a dog by dog basis. Some dogs really play very intensely and they're comfortable with that. And some dogs like kind of a play bow and then go their separate ways. So all of these factors are going to have an impact on how well a dog can control himself while he's playing. And generally, I would like to see in styles of dog play, we generally have wrestlers, taggers, and then chasers, chasees. Wrestlers, the dogs who are neck and face biting and like jumping all over and throwing each other to the ground. For dogs that like that style of play, I would want to see that they're doing a lot of releases, or essentially if one dog ends up on the ground, the other dog will pretty quickly, within a second or two, release them, give them space to get back up so they can throw each other to the ground again. It's also dogs who are, when another dog is on the ground, they don't start circling and going for feet or limbs. Like they're staying in the zone where the other dog can reach them, and if they choose to stay on the ground, that's because some dogs really, really love to wrestle from their back on the ground. But I would want to see the dog who's more on top staying in the range where the other dog can still be face biting with them back and not just having their back legs tagged and chewed on. So in taggers, those are dogs who kind of like to switch between some wrestling, some chasing, some running away. And for taggers, I would want to just see a lot of trades. So they run back and forth, they like wrestle a little bit, one ends up on the ground, then the other, they trade, they run back and forth. For runners, both chasees and chaser, I want to see a level of active agility that's still being executed. So dogs who can still make quick cuts back and forth. Dogs can stop like pretty quick and change directions. It would start to become a warning signal for me if I'm seeing dogs playing and they're starting to run hard enough where they're not really paying attention to their environment, or they're on a pure straightaway and they can't do any changes in direction because they're focused so much on running fast that they're no longer running aware. So then chasees and chasers, specifically chasers, that they can keep a distance from the dog that's running away from them, and they respect bench hides. Bench hides are if a chasee is running around and they feel like they're getting gained on or they're going to get cornered, they might dive themselves under a bench or into a zone where chaser can't access. So I would be looking to see if that happens, if the chasee dives under a bench or goes into a zone the chaser can't access, chaser will let it go pretty quickly. And for chasees, that they're not running so hard away that they just run themselves to a corner or run into people or obstacles, and that they can, if they need to, they can stop and face the other dog and say, nope, I need a break. Go play with somebody else. I'm going to just sniff the ground. Or they can show some displacement signals and not get kind of stuck in a loop until they make a mistake. So one of the things that I teach for dogs who really like to play, and this is especially good for sibling dogs if you feel like their play gets out of control at all, I teach a backup cue. And that essentially just means whatever level you're playing at, downshift 2 gears right now and go back to playing. So it's important to have treats for this one. You need high value rewards because you are asking your dog, stop like playing with your friend for a moment, like come back to me, check in, and down-regulate yourself immediately. So we're asking a lot from it. But for any dogs who are starting to play, I teach it as I ask for backup, and I'm starting that when they're just starting to play or when they're on the tail end of playing, and I'm not even asking for it when their play gets intense levels in the beginning, because it's just not going to be successful. Asking for something that's way too hard. So I'm building the difficulty into their most intense levels of play from either side at the beginning or the end. And I'm asking for a backup. If you need to, you can then put something directly in your dog's way for a moment to help them figure it out. So backup, and then like a cushion between them. And then they get lots and lots of treats for disengaging for a moment, and then you let them go back to it. But I've found it is very useful for dogs who are really intense players, or for whom they kind of like slam, or you start to wonder if they're going to break something around your house. So this is a good signal that I use for dogs like that, who they're comfortable with play that's really intense, but need to be a little bit more mindful of their surroundings. So that is all I had for this webinar. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. You can reach me at Pet Parent Allies at Gmail or on Instagram.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna unshare and come back.
There we go. If y'all have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box. Oh my goodness, that was a ton of information. I was just chatting to Michelle, the co-founder, about how cool it is to get to talk to trainers from different areas and different places. You know, we deal with a lot of the same problems, but such different ideas on how to tackle them, or different stories we tell, or different names we give to things. So it's always really, really fun to get to hear trainers talk about some of this stuff just from a very different perspective. So I really like the this or that game. I think that's something that most of us could enjoy, even in our own human lives. I think we could benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any like top 3 takeaways for folks that are here, or folks who just tuned in? Like, what are your top 3 things about self-control for the modern dog you think everyone should know?
I think top 3 things: go easy wherever possible, and if your dog is struggling with something, easiest solution is just take that thing out of their environment. Obviously, there are some things that you can't, but for whatever you can, do it. I would also say be mindful of self-control moments that stack up back to back to back to back, because eventually they will run out, and depending upon what their natural ranges are, that could look like a lot of things. So just don't let them run out of self-control in any given moment. And third would be the this or that game. Let them make choices, lots of choices. Whenever you have the opportunity to give them a choice about something, take it and let them choose their own reward.
Awesome. Great tips for life. It looks like right now we have stumped the audience. Nobody has questions at this moment. So if you do come up with questions, again, this will be posted to YouTube if you want to listen to it again. I will send out the link to everybody tomorrow. If you have questions, reach out to Curtis. I'll make sure that his email gets put into the YouTube presentation as well. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to him. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Again, this session is sponsored by Maddie's Fund as part of our Maddie's Fund speaker series that we're really excited about. We have a couple of really awesome webinars coming up soon. One is about cooperative care through a Control Unleashed perspective from Dr. Lin Cow. And then we have Moira Heckenleitner, who's going to be talking about separation anxiety. So stay tuned for future webinars. Thank you so much for coming out today. And a huge thank you to Curtis. We really appreciate you being here. And we're so glad we got to hear you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to be here.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.